Yo, Lisa,
Yes.
if I told you to give 200 of your closest friends and family $300 each, would you do it?
Well, I'm kind of a gift giver, so probably. But honestly, I don't think I even have 200 friends. But for real though, that is a lot of money. And apparently, that is the average cost per guest if you're having a wedding.
That is crazy.
Are weddings worth it?
Let's talk about it.
Welcome to Net with Lizzy and Lissa, where we analyze hidden costs and empower you to make your own damn decisions in life. Each episode covers a different facet of life, and at the end of each episode, we give our takes on whether something is net positive or net negative.
I'm Lizzy, a strategist and consultant with almost 20 years in finance and investing.
And I'm Lissa, an accredited financial counselor and personal finance content creator. We're best friends who talk about money
and everything else. First up, running the numbers on weddings.
So, like we mentioned earlier, the nationwide average cost per guest is $305. And the average cost of a reception is $35,000, according to The Knot.
Even that seems kind of low, though.
Seems
35?
low, right? I guess it depends on where you live.
Yeah, for sure. On average, couples are hiring 14 different vendors for their wedding day.
That's a lot.
That's a lot.
That's a lot of vendors.
Support those small businesses.
Now, 89% of couples hire a photographer, which on average costs $2,900.
And the cake costs an average of $540.
Man, I'm just going to go to Sprinkles.
Right?
Get a bunch of cupcakes for people.
And go to Costco. Obviously, these numbers vary based on your location and your market, but there are other costs to weddings in addition to the numbers. So let's talk about it.
So weddings.
To be clear, we're talking about weddings.
Yeah, not the marriage. Not the marriage.
That's a whole other conversation, and we'll get there. Trust us.
We're going to talk about marriage on another episode for sure.
But specifically weddings, what's the big deal? What's the deal with weddings? Why are they so important? Why do we do this?
Well, first and foremost, a celebration. Well, I guess they're marketed as a celebration of love, right? Marketed as a celebration of love. I still believe that is what they are, though, because you're there gathering a bunch of people and having a good time. So that is a celebration.
Sure.
Now, spending what we spend on weddings becomes the question, like, why would you spend that much on a celebration?
It's the wedding industrial complex. I think it's to your point about celebrations, it's interesting to think about the evolution of weddings as a kind of legal and religious practice, and kind of the association of, a religious ceremony having all of the trappings of honoring, God or whatever the ultimate meaning of that is, being a holy experience. And so that you want to wear your best. It's a very respected, reverent joining. And then that has carried over and evolved to where obviously you can have a secular wedding. It may not have any religious connotation. And yet that desire to put your best foot forward, look your best, keep up with the Joneses, show out, has really just grown over time. And I think it's also become an expression of your identity. It's one of the few moments in your life when you're going to have most, if not all, of the people that are important to you together in one place. And so it's an opportunity to say, this is what my experience is like. I'm going to curate this for you. Look how much I put into it. Yeah. Look how I did it. Look how good I look.
Right.
There's a lot. And people dream about it their whole lives.
So what do you think are the other milestones comparable to a wedding? Like graduation?
Yeah, but even that,
it's not.
You know what? I was trying to think as I was saying that, like, when else do you have everybody there?
Like, not even obviously not birthdays, because that happens once a
Yeah.
year.
I mean, that's
I guess depending on your culture, right? There's like quinceañeras.
sure.
there's a
Yeah, that might
debut.
that's a good one. Yeah, quince or a, bar bat mitzvah
So for a lot of people, it is the big event of your life.
of your life, right? You might have a birthday, but you wouldn't have, the same breadth of people, or other big celebrations wouldn't necessarily have the same meaning and symbolism, where you're like, oh well, they're gonna be slighted if I don't invite them to my wedding. I gotta invite all the cousins. I gotta invite all the family, or every friend.
It's one of those few things that has a timeline to, if you can do whatever way you want, but you send a save the date.
Sure.
You send an invitation. There's an RSVP deadline.
There's etiquette.
There's etiquette on how you perform the various functions of this wedding process.
Which, for someone like me, that I think etiquette is bullshit. Well, I think etiquette is an example of a certain subset of the population describing what is acceptable to the whole rest of the population. Typically, wealthy white people saying what everyone else is expected to do in order to conform and be considered acceptable. So you can ride that line, right? Of, do I want to follow this etiquette because it's what's accepted, it's what people expect me to do, or do I reject that and not want to go that way? And some people reject weddings, the event, and then marriage themselves entirely for that reason.
Well, you've had a wedding before.
I have. I've had a wedding. It was an unconventional wedding. I have shared that I was married when I was really young, under interesting circumstances. It was a real relationship, but we kind of rushed into a wedding. We just did a courthouse wedding. We went to the Santa Barbara courthouse, which is north of LA, which is a stunning, stunning building. I mean, it is incredibly beautiful. So, it's not like we were in a, nasty old room or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, we just got married by ourselves, which was interesting. I think in hindsight, there was this, for me personally, this feeling of knowing this wasn't truly aligned with what I wanted to do. So it kind of felt like we were doing it in secret, versus telling the whole world about it proudly. And so, that's different. But then we later had a big party with, friends and family. Yeah, you were there.
Yeah. So real quick on the party piece, you guys rented out a hall. I remember it. There was food, drinks, dancing. Did you guys pay wedding rates, or was that just a regular party rate?
This was cheap, man. I actually don't remember that answer to that question specifically. We had it at a rec center. Like, it wasn't some fancy place. It was the community rec center in Agora Hills outside of LA, which is it's a nice building, but it wasn't fancy. It wasn't elaborate. Partially because we were young, we were on a budget. My parents gave us $10,000 for the event. And then I paid some of the costs, our travel, because we were living in Pittsburgh at the time. I paid for my wedding dress and my shoes and stuff like that. But the event itself, my parents paid for $10,000 budget.
Well, the reason I ask is I'm currently planning my wedding for about a year from now in 2025. And I had a friend say, well, why don't you just rent out a space, have the celebration, and don't tell them it's a wedding.
Right.
Right? Because the markup, the price all of a sudden changes when you tell them it's a wedding. But
I don't even remember. I do know that because it wasn't a wedding venue, they didn't have, their caterer, right? It was just you rent the space. Everything was separate. And the advantage to that in our experience was that you have a lot more flexibility. So I think my cousin DJ'd. They we just bought alcohol. We hired bartenders and bought alcohol at Costco. We hired a separate caterer to just, do big buffet style food. I made the centerpieces. It was, really low key and fairly low cost. And I don't regret spending that amount. Obviously, I didn't pay for those. Shout out to my parents. but I don't think that's an unreasonable amount for the experience that we had.
Right.
But also, because we had already been married, I don't know, maybe 6 months or a year by the time we had that, and publicly, married, everyone knew, I didn't feel the need. I didn't take it as seriously.
Yeah.
I wasn't
You weren't
all
bridezilla.
worried about the details. I just wanted it to be fun. And it was, that was my experience. What are you looking at price-wise, cost-wise, as you're going through this wedding planning experience?
So some of those costs that we mentioned at the beginning of the episode felt low to me, but that's because we're in a higher cost market. We live in Los Angeles. And so far, for a wedding for anywhere between 150 to 200 people, and mind you, both of us have really big families.
Yeah.
The cost that I'm seeing, and this is just for the venue and food, so we're not talking about flowers, cake, and all that yet. It's ranging anywhere between $60,000 and north of six figures.
Whew.
Yeah. So that's why that comment where the homie said, like, why don't you just not tell them it's a wedding and we'll just do a party? Because I actually rented out a venue. This was in Northern California last year for my mom's 75th birthday.
Mm-hmm.
It was over 100 people. We had tables all around. We had sound system, played music, played games, had it fully catered. I don't think we spent more than $5,000. All my siblings pitched in. It was a very easy party to do. And you do the same thing, but you say that it's for a wedding and there's a woman wearing a white dress and a man wearing a tuxedo. All of a sudden, that becomes, times 5, $30,000 for that.
Man, that's predatory.
Yeah. Is the wedding industry like predatory, or are they smart for like,
I mean, that's capitalism.
Right.
When I say it's predatory, I mean that's capitalism. It is what it is.
Yeah.
That's what you're navigating. That's what you're going into. These are the circumstances you're dealt. So then you get to make your own choices.
Yeah.
Do you want to have it at a certain type of venue where you can get away with that, right? Or maybe they don't necessarily care. But if you want it at a hotel, most likely, or a traditional wedding venue, they're going to be much more prescriptive. This is our caterer, this is who we use. So get with it or get lost.
Yeah.
Right. And those are some of the decisions you have to make when you're navigating that.
So let me explain why I'm doing a wedding, like why we want one. Because as a financial counselor, as a 37-year-old who's seen friends get married, and some people go into debt for a wedding. Like, I'm in a good financial position where I don't have to do it, right? I could go invest, we can go invest that money and be fine. But we talked about it and we really want to do a wedding because it's important to us to celebrate us with our families. Mm-hmm. We're such big family people. So Alan, my fiance, he was born in Uganda and grew up in the UK, United Kingdom. I was born and raised in California, but I also have family in the Philippines. So our families are spread out. Our families and friends are spread out globally, not even just like across the country. And I just can't think of a time when we would be able to bring everyone together, hang out, get to know each other, right? Like his immediate family have met my family and friends, and my immediate family has met, certain key people. But if you want to get all of us in a room for a good time, like that just won't happen. It just won't ever happen unless we make it happen.
Right. Now,
I wouldn't go into debt for it, but because we're in a decent, strong financial position, we're like, all right, 60, if it's going to be $60K, hopefully it doesn't hit six figures. We're being really selective on who we pick to invite. Yeah. But, we want to do it for that reason. And it's because we know what we value. Mm-hmm. Do I recommend that for everyone? Probably not. Like there's a lot of, the financial cost alone is not just a financial burden, right? The financial cost, like I said, if it puts you in debt or it strains your finances, that now puts you in other
it sets
types
you
of
back.
strain. Sets you back financially, but it affects you with stress.
And affects your relationship. Right? And that's actually an interesting, I'm laughing because I know some backstories here. That's an interesting cost to think about in a wedding, planning a wedding.
Oh, yeah.
The stress on a relationship of planning a wedding.
I don't think I told you this. So I guess I have to give some context. So the last 2 years of my life, I've been self-employed. I moved on from working 9 to 5, strenuous tech job. And in these last 2 years, I've done a lot of healing. I feel like I'm in a great place mentally. I spend a lot of time in my day taking walks, doing yoga, managing my time, doing what I can to be stress-free, right? You can't avoid all stress, like it's life. But I do my best to just enjoy life. And with that, I've had less, I guess, stress dreams. I used to have a lot of stress dreams where like, oh, I'm late to work. Why am I stressing out about being late to work?
Right.
It's a whole another story. I haven't had a stress dream in a really long time. 2 weeks ago, I had a dream that was wedding related. It was a nightmare. It was like me and Alan, we sent out our invites to all of our friends and family. We handpicked people because there's a capacity to the venue.
Sure.
And then because we're planning it so far out, a year in advance, we met this couple that we started hanging out with a lot in town in LA, and they became like our best friends. Like
your wedding buddies?
Our not wedding buddies, our buddies in LA, just another couple that we met. You know, because my fiance moved here a year ago. We're just creating our shared life now, right? He's hanging out with a bunch of my friends, but we're starting to meet people together and make friends. So this nightmare, this nightmare was we started hanging out with this couple, nothing weird, just like friends, like really cool people. And then they were like, all right, well, we don't want to make it awkward, but so are we invited to your wedding or not? And me and Ellen were like, oh, we don't have any room. Like, we're so sorry. Like, and so in that nightmare, we've invited these people that, you know, that we care about, but maybe aren't as close with. And we can't invite these people that we just met. And like, I'm like, oh my God, of this stress-free life I've created, this stress-free wedding planning I plan to do over the next year, subconsciously, there's still elements that are affecting me.
For sure.
And I'm like, maybe because it's going to cost a lot of money, but I don't know why would something like that stress me out?
I think, having gone through your guest list with you line by line, I think there is a social cost of having to make difficult choices, right? The reality is it costs $300 per person, if not more. And it's not realistic to assume you can invite every person that you care about, right? You're a person with a huge family and a lot of friends. And I know from going through that with you, it takes an emotional toll. You want to be fair. You don't want to disrespect anyone. You never want anyone to feel excluded. And so having to make those difficult decisions is challenging. And I think it's weighing on you because you don't know that they're going to understand. Right, that they're going to not see that as a slight or feel like you feel some type of way. When the reality is you've just found a great place that has limited capacity and you have to make those decisions sometimes.
You know, a lot of people are telling me, it's your wedding, it's your money. You guys get to decide who gets to go. Just do what you want. Who cares what other people think? And I do agree with that to a degree. Like, yes, that is accurate. But you're right. Like, I do a little bit care what some of my family is going to think. You know, like, I have such a huge family, right? There'll be some families where it's like my auntie and uncle, and they got like 4 kids. And each of those 4 kids has like a long-term partner or whatever, right? And I'm like, well, I'm close to 2 of those siblings, but not the other 2. Right, you know, we're family, but like I haven't talked to them in a year. So can I just invite like one or 2? Can you pick and choose? Can you pick and choose? That's the hard part for me.
It's difficult. And I think there's a difference between caring what people think and not wanting to hurt people's feelings, right? I think those are kind of 2 different things. One is how are they going to judge you for that decision? And I don't necessarily think you care about being judged. I think you care about making someone feel bad, feel excluded, feel like they're the only one who didn't get to go. Man, they invited everyone else and I'm singled out that they didn't invite me. I'm the only person in my family that didn't get invited.
Yeah.
So I think that's because you're compassionate and you're an empathetic person.
To a fault.
To a fault.
I feel bad. I'm about to start crying right now.
To a fault.
Like, I'm really going to start crying right now because it is tough to, like, you want to take care of yourself first and foremost. And it's less about trying to appease everyone, but more that I want this to be joyous and a celebration. Like, I want to have a great time. And how can you strategically do that without hurting not a person's feelings?
Right. Right. And this is the emotional cost of planning a wedding. You have to make difficult decisions, just logistically, practical decisions, because you don't have unlimited money. You don't have unlimited space. And the intentions are not to hurt anyone's feelings, to slight anyone, to exclude anyone. It is just the reality. But that takes a toll. Like, clearly that's stressing you out. You're concerned about that. And not just because you don't want to hurt them, but because it is such a meaningful moment for you to have everyone come together. And if you had the option, you'd love to have everyone there, because I know you.
Yeah. Yeah, you hit it on the nail, because it's, for me, I guess, the emotional cost. Of course, the finances come into play. Like, 300 a guest is crazy. Yeah. Like you said, like, as you're going through your guest list and you're considering yes or no, that's $300 like for each person.
Yeah,
like,
would I give them 3 bills right now? Just
I know. I said yes at the beginning of the episode. Now I'm like, maybe not.
It's an interesting way to think about it. And that's tough because it puts a financial value on a relationship, which is
there's priceless,
not necessarily fair.
So many priceless elements also of having a wedding and a party.
But the reality is you might not even spend $300 on your own meal or experience to go to dinner with one of these people.
True.
So would you spend that for them to come to your event? Maybe, maybe not.
Yeah.
And that's just one way to look at it. It's good to have different lenses, right? So that you can kind of weigh the pros and cons.
Well, something you just made me think of too, just to add on to the financial cost, is the financial, I guess, burden you put on other people to have to travel. Whew. Flights, hotels, gas, and just something to wear even.
Right. And for a guest, but also certainly for a wedding party, if you've ever been a bridesmaid or a groomsman, that is not an honor, it is an expense. And I say this as your maid of honor.
Yeah.
Thank God you didn't pick no one else.
Can it not be both, though?
It can be both. Yeah, it can be both. I'm just being...
I know. I had this one year.
I'm being dramatic.
I was like a bridesmaid in 2 weddings, maybe 3. Cleaned out my bank account because I couldn't say no. It was just like...
No, you can't. Yeah. You're going to insult that person. And it's not that you don't want to spend that. It's just the reality is you have travel potentially to the wedding. You have a bachelorette or a bachelor party. You might have an engagement party or a bridal shower. Mm-hmm. There's multiple occasions where you have travel, potentially hotel. You have your outfits. You have hair and makeup. It is a commitment and an undertaking. I'm really glad I'm a your maid of honor. But
yeah, me too.
In other experiences, it's costly.
It is
right?
Costly.
And you're putting that on someone. And then certainly as a guest, you have a destination wedding for the majority of your guests or a good portion of them. And that can put them in that difficult position of not wanting to offend you because they can't make it or it's just not feasible.
I know. Well, that's where you send like agents into the field. So my mom was like, she's like, yeah, just invite so-and-so in their family. Cause like, I want to, but I'm like, are they even going to come? And my mom was like, well, they might feel bad for not going, even though it might put a strain on them.
Right.
But she was like, but it's okay. Once you send the save the date or the invitation, like, I'll talk with them. And if I get the sense that they feel bad, I'll just like reaffirm that it's okay if they don't go.
Right.
Yeah, it's not going to hurt anyone.
Right.
At least it'll still know that you love them. Like,
right.
Yeah.
Which it's funny because that also puts you in that delicate dance of like inviting people that aren't going to come so that they feel included, but that they don't actually count as a guest on your guest list.
Yeah, you're right. There are so many emotional costs to
Right.
wedding planning and having a wedding. Is there a way to, I guess, just for my own personal selfish benefit, is there a way to reduce that stress or emotional toll?
I mean, I know you and I know how important your family and your friends are to you, so I don't know that you'll get there because you're going to care. I mean, I think once you have made the decisions and the invites are sent, I think it is what it is.
But
right?
for someone in general, someone who's planning their wedding, it's a huge financial cost. There's a lot of family elements.
Right. I think with everything, any big decisions like that have a lot of stressors, it's always good to set out like your objectives in the beginning, right? You don't really think about doing that with planning a wedding. What is our objective for this wedding? Is it to have the most people here as possible, to have everyone we love in one place? Or is it to have something like extravagant? And those could be competing objectives based on your budget, right? Or, what is most important to you about this night? Is it creating the memories? Is it having everyone included? And essentially, you're kind of outlining your values for that experience. And then you can check back and judge your decisions based on that. And in my opinion, at that point, it's out of your hands. All you can do is do your best to align your decision making with your goals and your values. And then you can live with that because you've done your best. But knowing that in matters of family in particular, people are always going to have opinions. They're always going to have something to say, just like everything. Sometimes you just got to let it go, because the most important thing about the wedding that people forget is that it's about the marriage.
Yeah.
It's about being in love, having your partner. It's about the couple, even more than it's about everybody else.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you went that direction, because for me, I know that conceptually, mentally, but the emotional part is slow to follow sometimes. Like, I'll catch myself having that stress stream about it when I know logistically it's our wedding. It's mine and Alan's wedding. We're going to invite the people closest to us who play a role in our lives, who we know are going to be in our lives in the future. But it's like, how do you get those two to connect and be like,
right. One other thing that I've learned as an overthinker and an over empathizer myself is that sometimes by overthinking how someone will react to something, you're actually stealing their power from them to show you that how they would react. And often it wouldn't be an issue, right? We might worry so much. Oh my gosh, they're going to be so offended. Like, they're going to feel so left out.
And they're not
and the
thinking
reality
about
is
you.
They're not even thinking about you. They're relieved. They're like, fuck, I don't have another wedding to go to.
That's true.
Or they're just an adult and they're mature and they understand that that's not a personal choice, right? But if we try to enforce our emotions and make that decision for someone, we're doing them a disservice. We're not giving them the opportunity to show us how they really feel.
So I have a question.
Okay, let's go.
Not to put your stuff on blast, you've mentioned it publicly before, but you've been married once and you've been divorced.
Yes.
So if you end up getting divorced, do you still think that the wedding was worth it?
That's an interesting question. That kind of stumps me, because given my experiences, how much I've changed with the divorce as a catalyst, I feel like that happened to another person. And so I can't really even look back on the photos of it with like positive feelings. It's not negative. It's just, it's not something I like celebrate in my life. So I don't know that it wasn't worth it, because it was worth it at the time. And I don't really believe in having regrets. But certainly after divorce, your feelings about it change.
Yeah.
And I think that's interesting for guests. I wonder how guests feel about that experience. They were there the first time.
And they spent money.
They spent money to come.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think a lot of people spend a lot of money
not
for
on
my
yours.
situation,
Not on
but
yours
in general.
In
general. Yeah, I guarantee guests are like, man, y'all didn't even last 5 years
Yeah,
or
I spent
whatever.
all this money.
I spent all this money for what?
Yeah. But that's a very mature way to look at it, right? Like in that moment in time, that's what you wanted. That's what you decided. That's what happened. You have pictures of the occasion. You know, that was your person in that phase of your life, those years. Yes, your feelings might change now, right? You look back and like, damn, I spent all that money. I did all this. We have those pictures that I'm never going to put in a frame ever. I might even just throw them away. But the ability to look at that and just acknowledge that that was a part of your life, and that was the decision then. All you can do in the future is, next time that decision is to be made, you think about it. Am I okay spending this much money?
Right.
Going through this process, knowing that there could be a possibility.
Right.
That it's
or having. I haven't been married a second time, but I got close. And so, I considered that quite a bit of, all right, a second wedding, right? Do you invite the same people? Like, it kind of takes the shine off of it a little bit. You're like, oh, I'm back here again, y'all.
Right, right. Is there an embarrassment with
For
that?
sure.
Okay.
100%. Like, I've gotten over that a little bit, but 100% there is. And it changes. If I were to do it again, I wouldn't feel the need to invite some of the people that I invited the first time, because then it was a little bit more thinking of the fact that this is this big milestone and what you're supposed to do. And now it's more like, who do I actually fuck with?
Yeah.
Like, who are my people who know me, who saw me through that experience? Just in general, I care a lot less about other people's opinion than I did then. But it is different, right? Like, do you wear white? Do you like all these different things, do you make the same types of vows? And our wedding was very non-traditional to begin with. But yeah, you second guess those things. Is it worth it to do a second time is a whole different question.
So something we've kind of touched on a lot, but haven't outright spoken about is the time that you spend, the cost of time in planning a wedding. So I'm kind of lucky that I'm self-employed, so I can carve out an hour today to like send out my save the dates and handwrite every message. Would you, knowing the time that you spend on planning a wedding, would you spend that much time on it again in the future?
It's hard for me to say right now because you feel a lot differently when you're in love with someone.
Yeah.
And I am not.
Yeah, you want to do all the things.
Yeah, when you're in love with someone and you want to celebrate that, you have energy, right? Because it is a passionate force. Love is very powerful. So I can't really speak to how I would feel in the future. It is significant, though, and I think that's important to acknowledge. People will joke about Bridezilla, and I think that's, some people really go way too far. But at the same time, if you want to be compassionate, it's a lot of stress, right? And it comes from a place of just wanting things to be right, really caring. A lot of that is just, you just give a shit. That's all.
Yeah.
You just want it to be beautiful. You want it to be lovely because you want to honor the love that you have, and you want to honor the people that are there giving their time to join you for that experience.
It's fun. It's funny because I'm in the process of planning it all, and there's so many logistics, like all these not day-to-day decisions, but all these smaller decisions that go into the bigger thing. They take up your time and your energy, even just deciding.
Mental energy.
Yeah, mental energy.
Decision making is a big thing, and having ADHD, it's a hard thing sometimes to get over decision overwhelm, or there's so many options, or how do I narrow in? I could have any flower. What flower do I want? What colors do we want? What cutlery do we want? What chairs? What's the playlist? It's hundreds of decisions, and each of those decisions require research. They require consensus. Often there's one person driving it more than the other. Maybe you want the other person to be contributing just as much as you are, and they're not. And this is all on top of your day-to-day life at what is supposed to be celebrating, a great part of your relationship and can actually turn into an incredible stressor.
So a decision that we made early on was, do we have a Saturday wedding?
Yep.
So the cost differential between a Saturday wedding and any other day of the week,
significant.
So huge. It's like prime real estate. And we ended up saying yes to Saturday, which like pretty much doubled the cost. We haven't committed yet, but
why?
So the big why is the burden of cost. So not all of our family and friends will have to travel internationally for this. Yet and still, I think it's so interesting. I don't want to shame anyone, but I do think it's interesting when people choose to get married on like a Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
It saves them a lot of money. Maybe it's easier to get a venue because it's available. But it really does force anyone that you want to be there and that wants to be there to use some PTO or to, and so just me being me, like you were saying earlier, to a fault, empathetic to a fault, I'd rather take on that burden, double the price for me and Alan. Yeah, I don't think he knows it. No, he doesn't know that. He was part of the decision. So like double the price for us so that people can make it a weekend trip and not have to.
They don't have that additional inconvenience, which is an interesting point because I think the counter argument or the other side of it is, well, this is a once in a lifetime thing for us, and is it too much to ask? Sure, it might be less convenient, but is it better than not having it at all, right? And I think that's a valid point too. And again, these are things that you weigh for yourself, right?
Yeah.
If you have a limited budget or you're constrained, and maybe on a Thursday night, you can invite everyone you want to invite and they can all feel included, even if it's not ideal.
Yeah.
That's just a trade-off, right? And everyone's going to make the decision that makes the most sense for them.
I had someone ask if we would live stream it. And that might be a weird question, but not really since the pandemic. I had a lot of friends during the pandemic have to cancel, push, reschedule, or just do virtual weddings, which is I feel so bad for them because that was something that they obviously wanted to do. Otherwise, they would have just eloped. But, having gone through that, some of my friends are now, after the fact, having processed it and reflected on it, like, okay, cool, we got to save like $50,000 or whatever it was. But it did open up this like notion of what is it that we're celebrating, right? Because if people want to just watch the live stream so they can watch the vows and the thing, to me, I can understand the value in that. Mm-hmm. But personally, what I care about is the human connection.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, the party that happens when we're in the same room.
Right. But for other people, for many people, there's a lot of value in witnessing it. Mm-hmm. And that can be a religious term, right? Yeah. This is a vow. Yeah. Or secular, this is a vow, and I want to be witness to this vow as a form of honoring you. And, in some ceremonies, they even ask all the guests to kind of help the couple stay, aligned with their vows and be kind of part of this larger community. So
but you can do that virtually.
But
you can do that virtually,
exactly.
Right?
Yeah. So I think that it's really interesting to look at that and see what is valuable about attending for different people. And, the live stream could fill that need of feeling like they're part of it and they witnessed your commitment.
Might as well have a Zoom wedding. Then what's the cost of Zoom monthly? Because then you could significantly cut the costs.
Yeah, you could send everybody DoorDash.
Yeah, man.
DoorDash their own little dinner to every single guest.
Can we just go back on this average cost of a cake being $540?
I'm not a cake person like that. Don't get me wrong.
You will consume some
Don't
cake.
Get me wrong. Yeah. If there is cake, I will eat cake. But I'm not I don't crave it. I don't need it. It's not my preference. So to spend that much money on cake, granted, I understand the like craftsmanship and the artistry that can go into making a beautiful cake.
But so my question is like, is it because you specifically want that layered cake that's white and, you know, has the little figurines on top? Because you can get a really good cake that will feed, you know, a whole room of people for like $100, like a big sheet cake.
Sheet cake, yeah.
And just slap your picture on it.
Wedding cake.
Okay, it's
the wedding cake. It's the wedding cake.
Okay.
It's the tiered, it's the
slicing of it.
It's the slice, yeah.
Right.
It's the decor and for sure the markup.
Yeah.
Right? Which if you're, you know, if you have like a local bakery or something, that's probably a significant amount of your income.
Yeah.
So I get it.
Yeah, I don't mind supporting like local bakeries like that. I think for me, it's just like picking and choosing which things you want to spend on. Like you don't have to have the whole average 14 vendors, right? Like you can skip the flowers. Can you skip flowers?
I didn't have flowers.
Oh, you didn't?
Yeah. I didn't have flowers.
It was so long. I couldn't remember.
But I mean, yeah, being realistic about what those costs are. Or do you need a videographer and a photographer, right? Like, are you ever going to go back and watch your wedding video? I don't think people really do that.
You know what's funny?
If you do that, shout us out. I don't think I know anyone who's ever watched their wedding video. Actually, I watched Ashley's, but one time, right?
One time, yeah.
One time. And then like
but is that,
15
is
years
that
later.
for the other people or is it for the couple?
It's for the couple, but like, I mean, maybe, yeah, on your 20th anniversary, you pull it out.
Yeah. See, in the future, it's a nice thing to look back on.
Okay.
I think.
You gotta weigh the cost.
Yeah,
How much is that? How much does that add?
All right. So moving on, 20 cents. 20 cents is the segment of the show where both Lizzy and myself, Lissa, get 60 seconds to give our 2 cents on today's topic, whether or not it is a net positive or a net negative. Where does 20 cents come from?
Because you get the opinion of 2 dimes.
2 dimes. So corny. All right. Liz, you got 60 seconds on the clock. Are weddings worth it?
This is actually a tough one for me. Where I'm at personally in my life right now, I don't have a wedding in my foreseeable future. But, you know, somewhat recently that was a consideration, and I probably would have had an actual wedding event without going crazy on the cost, more like, you know, rent a nice house, do it in the backyard, small, you know, but get a taco truck kind of thing.
Yeah.
But that's just more my style. I understand the value of them in general for people. But I think for me, where I'm at right now, I'm going to say I would take the money and run.
And run into an investment.
Run into real estate, invest in my business and a nice ass vacation. The honeymoon is definitely worth it.
All right. With 5 seconds to spare, you are a net negative.
I'm kind of a net neutral, I'm going to go net negative.
For
this moment.
Right.
Net negative. I know there's no net neutral. I'm trying to break the rules.
Yeah, don't break the rules. Net positive or net negative?
All right. What do you think?
All right. We all know from this episode, I'm currently planning my wedding. It's going to cost a lot. Huge chunk of change. But the thing is, for me and Alan, we had multiple discussions of what it meant to us and why we would consider doing one and why we would consider spending that much money. So that's something that I hope everyone does. Don't do it just for the sake of doing it because it's tradition or because your parents want you to or because so-and-so wants you to. At the end of the day, like you said, it is your celebration and you might step on other people's toes for doing it your way. But as long as you do it because it's something you value and you have the financial means for it, then go ahead and do it, which is, for me, that's why it's a net positive for me right now at this moment.
I mean, it would be weird if you said a net negative right now. That would be weird.
Right, because then I'd have to cancel the save the dates I just mailed today.
Take those save the dates back.
Right?
That would have been weird.
All right. Well, everyone, remember that this is what we think in our own lives at this moment in time. You should have the agency to make your own decisions, and
can't nobody make that decision but you.
Exactly. So, what do you think? Are weddings worth it?
Hit us up. Let us know what you think. Let us know if you think the cake is worth it.
Yeah.
I want to know about the details. What do you think is worth it in a wedding, if at all? So DM us on Instagram at netnetpodcast or email us at hi@netnetpodcast.com. And if you want to follow us individually, here's where you can find us.
I am at Wealth for Women of Color on TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram.
And I'm at live_well_Lizzy on Instagram and TikTok. Hit us up.
Right.
Let us know. Are weddings worth it?
All references, statistics, and resources mentioned can be found in our show notes. This podcast is for educational, informational, and entertainment purposes only and should not be constituted as financial advice. Remember to always do your own research, consult a professional as needed, and feel empowered to make your own damn decisions.